Hey, what is going on, guys? My name is Gamertag and I'm back for your daily Fortnite video. Now in today's video I'm going to be sharing with you guys console settings that will allow you to improve your game overall. I know majority of my viewers actually play on the Xbox One and PS4, and I actually play on the Xbox One myself. So over the years that I played Fortnite on a console, I've learned settings that I find to be actually quite critical, and Epic Games as well has updated some new settings recently for Fortnite, and I just want to cover everything that I find to be critical for better game performance, whether it be things that will allow you to play better or settings that will allow you to have higher FPS and a smoother overall experience. Without further ado, let's hop right into this. So I'm essentially going to be working from left to right if you were to go in your settings menu on Fortnite. So this starts with obviously brightness. Now brightness I think is actually one that a lot of people overlook. A lot of people think that you would just keep it at the default, and honestly that's quite understandable why you'd think that. However, raising the brightness just slightly is actually something I've always done and a lot of other pro console players do as well. The reason you want to do this is because it actually gives you a better visualization of the game in general. So a lot of times when we're like the attic of a house or in a dark area in Fortnite, it can actually be kind of difficult to spot out a dark skin. So for instance, the Black Knight. If you're in the attic of a house and the Black Knight's hiding in a corner, it's going to be kind of difficult to even spot them out or notice them. And we've all had scenarios where we've actually been eliminated without even realizing the person was there. So by raising our brightness, I find that actually helps us to eliminate those scenarios from happening. So I really strongly recommend you guys raise this to about a 120%, and this should allow you guys to basically see everything a lot better. The next setting that I find to be actually pretty important is in the advanced graphics, and this is a brand new setting to console known as motion blur. Now actually the PS4 Pro as well as Xbox One X has had this setting for maybe 6 months now, but now every single console has it as far as I know. I'm not sure why they decided to add it later than the PS4 Pro or Xbox One X, but there probably is a viable reason, and since the setting was added, I've been using it, and I've actually kind of liked it a lot. With it on, I feel like everything's a lot more fluent, everything kind of fits together, and it just seems a lot more smoother while playing. If you have it off, everything seems a lot more sensitive and kind of like snappy in a sense. It just isn't as smooth or fluent when playing, so this is why I strongly recommend you guys turn motion blur on. However, I do know it's definitely not everyone's cup of tea, so if you don't like motion blur all that much, then by all means feel free to turn it off. This one is kind of personal preference, but majority of players probably would like to have this on. Now for the next tab of console settings is actually the game settings, and I'm not going to be covering sensitivity settings as I find that to be more important for my controller videos, whereas this one again is directed towards more so console rather than just controller. So over here we're going to start with the HUD scale. The HUD scale basically is the heads up display, essentially meaning it shows everything from inventory to your items to your map to your health. Basically this is what the heads up display is, and the scale is basically how big it appears on the screen. So by default the HUD scale is at a 1.00, so if you were to increase it then everything would appear larger, and if you were to decrease it everything would appear a little bit smaller. I personally like to decrease the HUD scale just slightly to around a 0.75 or a 0.80. This is what I've been doing for quite some time, and I feel like overall it just gives me a better visual of the game. My view is no longer kind of blocked by the map at the top right or my inventory. Again, it just gives you a better visual of everything in front of you and around you. Next is show FPS. This one's kind of pointless in my personal opinion. I know for PC players this is one they would recommend to have on because you can see what your frames per second is, whereas console it's not as efficient or even useful. Obviously console is only capped at 60 frames per second. There's no way it will ever go over that, at least not for now. So basically with showing FPS on, it'll never go above 60 FPS, and it never really drops that far below it, to be honest. So showing FPS is something that really isn't that necessary and kind of just takes up extra space on the screen. So this is one that I've always had off, and just as kind of a personal preference. Continuing on downward is actually now the control options. These are kind of miscellaneous settings that I recommend you have on or off, starting with sprint by default. I strongly recommend everybody have sprint by default on for a couple of reasons. One is because, well, there's never really a time in Fortnite where you should not be sprinting. You might say, well, if you're crouching then sprint by default should not be on, but actually when you crouch, sprint by default doesn't even take effect. So you can turn sprint by default on and still have comfort when crouching. And then the second main reason is because it actually allows us to free up our button and our keybinds, this being the left analog stick clicked in. Next, going downwards is tap to search or interact, and I recommend you guys have this turned on. This is one I really love. Now it doesn't affect too much in the game, however it is extremely user friendly and kind of adds a ease of access when playing. Basically tap to search or interact refers to when you open your chest, an ammo box, a supply crate, or even revive a teammate. You no longer have to hold square X through the entire cycle. You can actually now just simply tap it rather than holding it. So this one again is kind of just a user friendly setting and not super critical. Next, of course, is aim assist. Everybody on console or any platform you play on should have aim assist on. Obviously, a lot of PC players complain about console having aim assist, but realistically, we kind of need it, and that's actually inarguable. So definitely have aim assist on. If you do not, for whatever reason, please turn this on. Then below that is edit mode aim assist, and on the contrary, I want you guys to have this off. Reason being is because there's actually no way for Fortnite to even predict or estimate what kind of edits you're going to make. So when you have edit mode aim assist on, it kind of like drags your cursors in all sorts of directions, and it messes up your edits so much. It's going to slow them down a lot. They're going to be so much more inefficient. So definitely turn this setting off. When it's off, you'll basically have full control of your edits, which of course we want. Controller auto run really doesn't matter that much considering we're using sprint by default. Auto open doors is one that's kind of subjective. So if you're a player that is constantly making edits, then you're going to want to turn this on, for the main reason being a lot of players might mess up their 3-corner edits and edit a door instead. And instead of having to reset your edit or basically manually open the door, with auto open doors on, you can run right through it. Now if you're a player that's not constantly making edits, then you can definitely leave this setting off. This now leads us to confirm edit on release. This is like the most popular setting in Fortnite, and it's so controversial. Some people will say to have it on, and others will preach against it. Now, my personal opinion is this one's also kind of subjective. Now, if you're a player that has like pro level edits, like your edits are extremely fast and efficient, then this setting should be left alone. There's really no need to turn it on at all. It's not going to help you in any way, shape, or form. However, if you're anything besides that player, so whether this be a beginner at editing, an average player at editing, or maybe even a slightly above average when it comes to editing, then I strongly recommend you turn this on. I mean, as the name suggests, basically you no longer have to press confirm when you go to make an edit. The second you let go of the button, the second you let go of right trigger, it'll automatically confirm it for you. This will allow you guys to practice your edits and speed them up a little bit. Next is actually below this at controller edit hold time. Now this one is also kind of subjective. If you're a player that uses default keybinds, then this one should actually be lowered to around a 0.10 or maybe a 0.150. This way, when you go to edit, you don't have to hold your B or circle button super long like you originally would have. However, if you're a player like me that has an instant edit keybind, then this setting really doesn't matter and won't affect anything at all. Moving our way downwards is actually vibration now. This is one that I really recommend everybody have off. By default, this setting is turned on, so a lot of people are kind of used to it. Whenever you take shots, you know, you feel the vibration in your controller, so you know you're getting damaged, but realistically, it's not helping that much. If anything, it can actually kind of mess up with your aim a little bit. It's just a setting that I really recommend you have turned off for a variety of reasons. The next is going to be the replays. This is going to be record replays, record large team replays, and record creative mode replays. And I recommend you guys have all of these turned off. And you guys might be wondering why, like what does this really affect? Basically, I know a lot of you guys like to watch your replays at times, but I promise you guys, these turned off will make your game so much smoother and have so much more consistent FPS. You will no longer have micro stutters or lags pretty consistently. Again, your game will be so smooth while playing simply by turning these settings off. I found this out from like a streamer, and when I turned it off, it was like a night and day difference. I wish I had figured it out sooner, and ever since then I've turned my replays off. Don't get me wrong, there's times where I really like to go and watch my replays back, but it definitely is not worth playing with micro stutters and lag throughout the entire game. So by turning this off again, basically just allows for way more smoother performance and gameplay on console Fortnite. Now we're going to move our way to the next right tab, and this is going to be audio. Now basically the one I really want to focus on in this setting menu is actually going to be the 3D headphones. 3D headphones is one that's also a very controversial setting. A lot of players that use it absolutely love it, however some players absolutely hate it. There's realistically no in between. So this is one I really recommend you form your own opinion on. I mean, I've been playing Fortnite for like 2 years now, so when I turn this on, it's so like unnatural for me, and I feel like I can't hear everything as well as I should, so I leave this setting off just for my own personal preference, but I know there's players that are kind of new to Fortnite, and using this setting allows for them to hear everything better. Everything's a lot more precise, and you can almost direct where every sound's coming from. So like a chest, it's easier to hear which room it is in, or if a player is above you or below you, it's a lot easier to hear. So don't get me wrong, I think this setting is perfect. I think this setting is amazing and very helpful for players that use headphones, but for me personally, I just have been playing without it for years on Fortnite. It's just so unnatural and not preference to my taste. Now that's pretty much going to be it for all of these settings for console Fortnite that will improve your game. We covered settings from like brightness and why you should turn it up. We covered obviously the miscellaneous settings. We also discussed motion blur, kind of what it affects and if you should have it on or off. And then also like the most critical part, which is the replay settings and how you can actually use those, or not use those rather, to allow for your game to play a lot smoother and obviously a lot consistently in terms of frames per second. Obviously, we didn't cover sensitivity settings or keybinds. As most of you know, I come out with weekly videos on my channel where I share with you guys the best controller settings at the time. And obviously this video is a lot different from that. It's not necessarily the same thing by any means, so I didn't want to just target and hone in on controller settings alone. Obviously there's some settings I left out like accessibility, colorblind modes and things like that, but that is just basically settings that are preference to your own liking, so you guys can go through those and check out what you prefer to use. Now if you guys enjoyed today's video or found it helpful, a like would be extremely appreciated down below. Again, I would appreciate that so much. And of course on the contrary, if you genuinely disliked today's video, then by all means feel free to leave a dislike as well. And if you're new around here and would like to see more daily Fortnite content like this in the future, then feel free to subscribe as well as turning on those post notifications. Nonetheless, my name is Gamertag. Thank you all for watching today's video, and I'll see you tomorrow. Adios.